As a young child, Edwina Adams was quiet by nature. She would whisper when speaking. In boot camp, she was thrashed for not yelling loud enough. But when she discovered her ex-husband was a con man, she started to make noise, proving you don't have to be loud to make some noise. Now Edwina's on a mission to motivate. So kick back and tune in for candid conversations with those who have harnessed the power of their voices. Let's make some noise.
Welcome to Let's Make Some Noise, where you can make some noise no matter what you sound like. And of course, NOISE is my acronym for a narrative of inspiration, strength, and encouragement. And guys, this is going to be fun. Today, I have Christian Ray Flores with me. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He went from being a child refugee to an international pop star, entrepreneur, and philanthropist. He's now also an evangelist and a performance coach. So, hey, Christian, thanks for being here today.
Edwina, thanks for having me.
So I really want to learn more about you. And, we talk about taking adversity and turning it into noise, which is that narrative of inspiration, strength, and encouragement. So your narrative sounds like it's had a lot of twists and turns and opportunities to really develop you and your character.
Yeah.
So can you share with me a specific moment of adversity that you can think about that really challenged you and how that shaped you as the person you are today?
It seems that most of my childhood was like a series of those, right?
Yeah.
And I would say I would just pinpoint a few just to give you maybe like a trend, right? A pattern. You mentioned earlier that I was a refugee at age 5. I was in Chile. My mom's Russian, my dad's Chilean. So we lived there until there was a military coup. There was thousands and thousands arrested, put in concentration camps. A bunch of people got tortured and killed. My dad was one of the people that was put in a concentration camp. So one of my first childhood memories was standing outside of it with my mom, and my mom's trying to pass some food to my dad. And like, it's just awful stuff. Like, no kid should go through that. We ended up in a UN-sponsored refugee facility before we were essentially promptly kicked out of the country and went traveling. And we ended up going to Germany, Russia, then Africa. I grew up in Africa. There was a civil war in Africa, like year one after I landed there.
Oh my goodness.
We had bombings in the capital. Most of the civil war was in the north, but we had bombings. We had like spy planes being shot down from the sky, things like that. And then at age 14, my parents got divorced, which was a bigger trauma to me than the civil unrest and the military coup. It's interesting how that affects us so deeply. And we landed in Russia after the divorce, and we were poor. I slept in the kitchen. We had like a 1-bedroom apartment with me and my mom and my sister. And it was just starting over, and it was just sort of this awful, gray, mediocre, no upward mobility, Soviet Union kind of existence until the whole thing fell apart. Now, when it fell apart, there were tanks in the streets again. We're like, what's going on? Civil unrest seems to follow us everywhere we go. So I'm a little concerned about Austin, Texas, where I live now. But I would say that would be like a pattern of extreme socioeconomic shifts, right? And they were all, of course, accompanied by financial problems, like whole economies would collapse during some of those big shifts, and that was sort of the backdrop of my childhood. Now, another layer is sort of the cultural shock, because by age 7, I had moved to 4 different countries on 3 continents. So for a child to be, hey, people look like this and sound like this and behave like this. Oh, no, they don't. Actually, they look like this, sound like this, behave like this. You go to a 3rd place and a 4th place. That was a lot of processing for a young boy to and adjusting, right, for a young boy. My dad tells me that I was silent for a full year when we moved to Africa because I was so confused. And like in public, I wouldn't speak. I would just be there in the corner, And he's like, "Why are you quiet?" I said, "I don't know how to speak, Dad," and because the languages kept shifting on me, right? So that's a good backdrop
that makes sense.
To offer you as an idea, as a baseline, right?
Wow, that's a lot. So that's a lot for me to process just hearing it. I mean, I was a military brat, so I get the concept of moving around, meeting different people. but not to that extent and not to that level. I know from experience that there are some good things that can come out of that, right?
Of
Like
course, a lot.
you probably enjoy meeting different people and learning about different cultures. You're accepting of different things and different people, and change is inevitable to all of us. So when you grow up with that much change, you're just like, well, bring it.
Yeah,
It's just the
you
way
get really
it's
comfortable
the
with
way life
change.
is.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that can be really good. How do you think those qualities that you got from your childhood being like that, how do you think they helped you in your path and in your journey along the way?
In so many ways, Edwina, so many ways. It was. I look back at that difficult period to a large degree as a massive blessing, right?
Mm.
You know, the lowest hanging fruit here is that I learned 4 languages by age 9, which I
Wow.
still speak, and that just really shapes you in all kinds of different ways. And you know, adaptability, I think it's a big thing. I really learned how to love people and enjoy people,
Hmm.
and that helps. You know, because any success in life involves other people, and
Yeah.
if you learn how to get along with them, how to understand different perspectives, and how to truly, actually, genuinely enjoy diversity of thought and ideas and culture. That is, I think, a massive advantage as well. Learning how to learn, it is quite literally, I consider that the skill of all skills. Learning how to learn fast, that was just a wonderful thing. But you're forced to learn a certain way, and then and not until I was maybe in my 30s or mid 30s that I realized that that's not normal how I approach learning. For example, right? I just had it my whole life.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, learning 4 languages, they say that when you do that, I mean, of course, your neural pathways are just expanding, expanding, expanding.
Yeah.
So, that's beautiful to think of what your mind is capable of doing and what you have allowed it to do. Um, what so how does a child who was literally a refugee, his dad was in a
Yeah,
concentration
yeah.
camp,
They put them
and
in soccer stadiums because that they could hold more people there.
oh my gracious, that type of trauma can do one of two things, right? It can stunt somebody and they can just shut down, or they take those memories and do something amazing with them. How did you end up being in the role of a child pop star through all this?
Well, basically, went back to Russia. I had no one in my family is an artist. In the extended family, I actually did. On the Chilean side, I we even have like I think like a great grandmother once removed who is a Nobel Prize winner in poetry,
Mm.
and but not in the immediate family. So I was musical my whole life. You know, when I was 4 years old, I had a voice, and my mom and dad would say, "Hey, why don't you sing for our guests?" You know, so they would basically have me perform for their house guests, and that sort of that seed started evolving. I joined a little folk group, you know, in Mozambique and Africa, and I had this. You have this sense, very intuitive sense, where you do this one thing and time stops, and you're in the state of flow, and you have this enjoyment to you. So that showed up early, but I never thought it would be a practical thing that I can use. Then eventually, when I was sort of a teenager, started breakdancing.
Oh, yeah.
Again, you know, waste of time from a practical standpoint. You know, okay, he'll get over that phase, except I didn't. You know, and and you know, and then but I was getting like a normal education. I got a master's degree in economics. I was the youngest in my class, graduating class. I graduated at 21 with a master's, and so I had sort of all of the makings of somebody who would go the traditional, you know, way, except I was bored out of my mind, you know, in those fields. So I was like, you know what, I'm not married, I can live out of a shoebox, why don't I give this a try, you know, let me try for showbiz. I did. And it was just the right time, the right place. I had the right sort of set of capabilities, I guess, and work ethic. And within a year, I was on national television in Russia. And then it just sort of escalated from there. I did the small clubs, and then it was bigger clubs, then it was sports arenas, and got a bunch of hits across 15 different countries. So I traveled that whole former Soviet Union territory, 15 countries, from the Baltic states in the west all the way to like Vladivostok, which is like 100 miles from Japan on the east, and then all the way south, all the stands, Georgia, Armenia, all those countries basically. So
That's incredible. So what language were you singing in? Was it Russian?
it was Russian. Yeah, I had a little bit of English, but it was mostly Russian. Yeah, and
That is so
yeah,
fascinating.
it just happened, and that launched my sort of high achievement chip, I guess, because when you have a taste, oh, I can have a leap in my career, not just a gradual, sort of slow growth in my career. So it taught me a lot about the dynamics of leaping in careers, essentially.
So that leads me to my next question. What role do you feel like your community, your family, or mentors played in you taking those like quantum leaps?
Well, I had starts and stops with that, right? So when I was in before the divorce, I had a lot of that. I had this sort of community of Chilean immigrants in Africa, which is a very distinct group of people, right? They just hang out together all the time. And that was wonderful, right? There's so much belonging. And then my dad was fantastic. My mom was great. They were loving parents, and then they got a divorce. And that marked a massive shift into no community, or little community, I would say, where we had to move back to Russia. Soviet Union was just depressing, to be honest with you. Like I was just not happy. And my dad was not there during my puberty years where I needed him to guide me and, keep me from doing stupid things. And he wasn't there.
Yeah.
And I had some friends. My mom was extremely sacrificial and super supportive. I mean, she was my biggest champion. She really was. And she did, I think, instill in me this sense of I can do anything, because that's what she would keep saying to me. But besides my mom and maybe some classmates here and there, really no mentorship at all. And for almost a decade, more than a decade, actually. And not only after I sort of hit my first massive success, I had a #1 hit. I was campaigning, like I was helping Boris Yeltsin get elected. He was fighting against the communists and stuff like that. He used my song as the anthem, for his campaign.
Really?
And yeah, and fame really does expose a lot of the sort of flaws that are under the surface. So I was really struggling emotionally, really struggling. And that's when I met a real sort of this Canadian pastor who became essentially my coach and my mentor. And he had all this wisdom that I never learned through my upbringing. I had no moral framework, basically. It was really more with common sense than a moral framework. And I think we need moral frameworks to help us navigate. And I just didn't have it. So I just didn't know what I didn't know. So when he started teaching me these things that I never heard in my life, it just started, the puzzle pieces started falling together. And I really became extremely interested, and this is early to be interested in personal development and psychology and all of those other things, right? Spiritual disciplines. 26, I started getting really obsessed over, and I read all the books I could get my hands on and learned so much. And that sort of redirected my life in a positive way where, I was able to realize my dreams, dream better and function better and, execute better on the dreams that I wanted to reach. Personal goals, marriage, romance, things that I was just terrible at. I was just awful at it. All of those things got learned and fixed and sort of changed, and I sort of learned that we are multidimensional beings, and that most high achievers, and I was definitely on that list, we overinvest in some things and we underinvest in a whole bunch of other things. And that catches up with us. That was a big learning, that you can't just ignore the things that are quintessentially human about you and just do the thing that you're obsessed and you're getting rewarded by the world for, specifically professional development. Like it's you're not in a vacuum, right? So I learned that and I started to fix it, and it just changed my life. That's part of the reasons I coach, is because I was coached and I was already a high achiever, right? But it was incomplete, disharmonious, and that
Yeah.
disharmony and these flat sides, they slowed me down. So otherwise I would be progressing much faster, but I just wasn't ready. So what I realized is that, you can be extremely lucky and talented and have a work ethic, but if you don't figure out those other dimensions that will make you into a flourishing human being and a top performer for the long haul, eventually you will hit a wall. And that's what most people that are exceptional in some way, that's what happens with most of them. They hit a wall.
That's really powerful. So do you think like your mentor giving you this like moral framework helped you develop your purpose then? Like once you knew that was a big part of it or like a missing piece,
Yeah.
is that, did you see a lot of change?
I think it was purpose, just a higher purpose. When you are the center of your own universe, it's hard to succeed, actually, because you can't transcend who you are. That's one piece. The other one is, if you don't learn actual ancient wisdom that will teach you, sort of create in you virtues, right? How do you think about power? How do you think about fame? How do you think about sex? How do you think about money? How do you think about service to others? Those sort of big philosophical things that they seem ethereal, but they're quintessential to navigating life. So if you don't think about it deeply enough, you don't have opinions about it, you don't shape yourself according to them, you don't develop the virtues, the disciplines around those things, you'll end up really wandering in the dark for a long time, and be
Yeah,
bitterly disappointed even in the successes that you achieve.
I think you're right. I mean, that's why we see it over and over again in Hollywood or the music industry. People, they make it to the top and they're still missing something, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All the things of this world just can't fill that void that you're talking about. So, good mentorship and learning those things. Like if you didn't have somebody to mentor you as you're growing up, it is very, very important to find that. And it's important even, I mean, I had great parents and had good mentorship. It's still important for me to find that, right? And
Oh, it
just
is. Yeah, it
always
never
be
stops.
learning, always be getting
Yeah.
mentorship.
Yeah, it never stops. I have a curated, tight group of mentors, a whole group of mentors now, and I'm 55 years old. And
Nice.
I submit myself to them, and I listen to them, and I'm vulnerable with them.
Hmm. That's awesome. So, what advice would you give to someone who's facing struggles and they might not see yet how to turn them into something positive? What words of wisdom do you have?
Well, I would say, I mean, I can tell you what they need to discover, but that's not going to help them. That's going to get them more frustrated because they go, "Yeah, I want that. How do I get there?"
Yeah.
so, so really, what you need to do is you need to learn the skill of reframing your stories, because you are the stories that you tell yourself. You become those stories. It's a self-fulfilling
Mm,
prophecy.
I like that. Yes.
So, it's very well, there's lots of studies around this. This is well documented, that you can reframe the stories. I mean, some of the term that I've learned from talking to one of the lead researchers on growth mindset, his name's David Yeager. He said it's called transfer. Is, remember the time where were building a log cabin with your grandpa, and you're complaining and you're crying and you're tired and this and that. What that really taught you is endurance and investing in long-term results, because then when you saw that log cabin built, that was amazing, right? Wasn't it? Okay, how do you transfer that to today? Going to college, getting better grades, applying for a job, advocating for yourself in your corporate job. how do you implement those muscles that you actually have? So that's called transfer, right? So in the same way that I shared with you like a whole bunch of stuff, and the difference between someone who is paralyzed by these traumatic events and basically becomes a perpetual victim, that's your baseline. And the difference who become someone who says, yeah, if I could survive this and get better, I can start a new company, I can start a nonprofit, I can aim high. I have all these muscles, essentially, these emotional, mental, intellectual muscles. I look at myself in the mirror and I look like a normal person, but when it comes to capability, I'm a sort of this very jacked person.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah, and I think most people know that's what needs to happen. It's just they don't know how, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
So and that's sort of the big question mark. Where are you? What's going to help you most? That sort of thing.
That's what noise means to me. 'Cause it's not about just showing up and being angry about your past or being bitter, middle-aged woman or man about what went wrong in your life. What can we do with this? Like
Yeah,
nothing should go unused, right?
yeah,
And and a narrative is the good, the bad, and the ugly. And you told us a lot of
yeah. A lot
bad
of
and
it. Yeah,
ugly stuff that happened to you, but it can be used as inspiration, strength, and encouragement for yourself and for other people. So you have done such an amazing job with that. And I know that sharing your story here and wherever else you share um, just encourages tons of people and has a massive ripple effect. So thank you for your vulnerability in doing that, because it's easier said than done, right? And I know
yes,
you've done it multiple times, so it's probably not as hard to you anymore. But it's not easy to come out and just be like, yeah, this happened to me and that happened to me, because you feel like people are going to judge you and look at you different. But there's such power in owning that in a positive way.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, we think because we fear rejection, we don't want to share the dirt. But the dirt is that communicates authenticity to other people.
Mhm.
People trust you because you say, "This is just who I am," words and all. That's really the best way to connect.
Yes, definitely. Well, speaking of connecting, you're an evangelist, you're international speaker, correct?
Yeah.
With that, and then you're a coach to people. So how could people connect with you if they wanted to?
Well, if you want to sort of just get more inspiration and get the best of what I have, you can go. You can just subscribe to my newsletter. It's free. If you want to access the whole archive, where there's a lot of really good stuff there, you can just. It's for the price of a latte a month. You can be subscribed to the whole thing. But all the new episodes are free, so at least right now they are. And we have like 20 something thousand subscribers, and a newsletter goes out every Sunday. And I basically share everything completely openly. Like I don't really hold anything back. Everything that I know that I teach my clients, I share there. Now, the difference between thinking, believing, being inspired, and actually getting help to implement it is sort of the difference between the newsletter and the coaching program, right? So the coaching
Yeah.
it's really not for everybody. It is pricey. It's for people who have really, really decided to change their lives, and they're professionals that really are driven and they want to be at the peak of their performance forever. Those are the
Yeah.
kind of people that we coach. We are oversubscribed usually. So if somebody wants to find out more about that, you can go to exponential.life, exponential that starts with an X, not an E, and you'll see
Okay.
sort of the broad strokes there. We do offer a really cool tool that we actually use with ourselves and our clients. It's called the Exponential Scorecard. And you go to the same website and you can click on that, and it's completely free for you. And it's based on very comprehensive studies. And it's basically gives you this, asks you a bunch of questions, like 40 plus. It takes maybe 7-8 minutes to complete, so it's not that long. But it gives you very specific, crisp, clear, almost like a score about the main dimensions that matter should be measured, should be known, so that you know where you are before you want to decide where you want to go from there, right? So that's the exponential scorecard. You can go to exponential.life and get it, or exponential.life/score. Either or works just fine. And I think it's going to be it's helpful to people who are curious and want to be more self-aware.
I'll make sure. So those of you listening, it'll be in the show notes, the links to his websites, and then on the video, I'll make sure there's text on screen so people can find you easily. Well, this has been so great and very encouraging. You are inspirational, and I can only imagine how impactful your coaching is. So, and I hope everybody listening goes and at least gets the free scorecard done, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, what will that hurt? And is there anything else that you can think of, or any closing thoughts that you would love to share with the audience today?
This is my pet peeve and my biggest inspiration. So I'll say it in one thing, right? Aim high. Aim high, because most of us erroneously think of ourselves that we're not capable of doing anything on a high level. So we don't aim high. And by definition, most people will aim to the middle. And I think all of us aim to the middle in some areas of life, right? And we know how it feels. Mm-hmm. We want to keep it safe,
Yeah.
Well, the problem with that is that most people aim for the middle. So it's super crowded and competitive in the middle. But if you aim high and you make the decision, I'm going to change. I have to change for things to change. You will be shocked at what you're capable of doing. The freedom you get to experience, the joy, the purpose, the impact on other people, how many people you can help. But you have to aim high, and you have to make the changes. You have to make that decision. I am going to change who I am fundamentally. And you will be surprised that you're capable of way more than you think.
That is so true. And I used this term earlier. That's what's referred to as, I don't understand quantum physics. Maybe you do. Your neural pathways have grown more than mine with all the languages, But quantum physics says like you said, don't just try to take that small leap. You can actually make a big one. And you can do that in your personal life and your business life. And that could be something as simple as you're petrified to get on camera and talk about your business.
Yeah.
Well, you can spend a year building yourself up, or you can just get up one day and just do it. It's a quantum leap.
That's right.
Nobody's stopping you. Like, you have permission to do it. There's nothing stopping you except yourself. So Christian is right. Just think big, aim high.
Yeah.
And if you fall short, it's okay. Get up and do it again. And find a mentor, find a coach, a good one.
That is probably the next best thing. Yeah. Because you accelerate your growth.
Yes. Accountability is huge and important.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, I really enjoyed having you on here, and thank you again for your time. And everybody go check out Christian Ray Flores. Hey, thank you for listening. 2 things. If today's episode brought you inspiration, strength, or a new perspective, I would be so appreciative if you subscribe and leave a review. Your feedback helps me keep bringing stories and insights that matter most to you. And second of all, to stay connected or engage with the community, go to edwinaadams.com/links. That's LINKS. And remember, you're one step closer to building beyond your adversity and crafting a life of impact and purpose. Keep making noise, and we'll see you on the next episode.